Why were over 200 other students and I in the basement of the Montgomery Knight Aerospace Building at 6:45 a.m. on a Tuesday early this semester? That is precisely the question I set out to answer when I began researching the machine shops around campus, but I found a deeper rabbit hole about the paradoxically dying and living field of operative machining, both at Georgia Tech and in industry. Before we get back to 200 kids in the basement, I have to give some context to avoid getting the aerospace department looked into by the FBI for kidnapping. We were all there to sign up for the coveted machine shop training classes. A few days earlier, at the first meeting of YJSP, which is a rocketry club for those of you who may not know, we were being officially onboarded. During a meeting with the structures director, Joseph Gellin, he told us that instead of going to sign up for classes when they opened at around 9:30, we should instead be there 3 hours beforehand. Rightfully so. A ton of people thought it was a joke, but he was being dead serious. Heeding his warning, I woke up at 6:15 a.m. and walked over from 8th Street in the cold and dark, expecting to be about the first person there, along with my roommate, who was coming with me. I wish I could show you the picture, but know that the Montgomery Knight basement is a very long and straight hallway, and when I got there, I got in line where the line began to bend back on itself. It's also important to note that there are only about 150 slots to sign up for, and people kept coming for the next 3 hours straight. After a time, I started telling people to just leave because there was physically no way that they could ever get a spot. At the structures meeting the next week, no less than 5 different people asked about alternative ways to get training because they could not get slots. In particular, someone asked why we didn't use the Invention Studio because it was open to everyone and required less training. After hearing no real reason as a response, the idea to investigate the different machine shops was born, and more than that, why is machining so big at Georgia Tech? But first, a message from our sponsors. Are you looking for a chill, all-around space for designing and machining? Then come on down to the Invention Studio and make use of our 3D printers, lathes, CNC, and welding equipment, among other tools. If you are into bikes, we have a full bike shop, complete with specialized tools for every malady affecting your bike. Our team of student staff members will help you with everything you need. No prior training required on most machines, excluding lathe, mill, and CNC. Terms and conditions may apply. I interviewed Thomas Wise, who frequents the Invention Studio, about its capabilities to start my research. Along with providing the information from the previous ad read, there were a few issues he identified. Along with it being very crowded during peak hours, it gets very loud between the numerous people, heavy machinery, and constant hums of the 3D printers. As I was interviewing him, many similarities between the machinery in the Invention Studio, Montgomery Machining Mall, and Aero Machine Shop began popping up. Lathes, mills, CNC, and a water jet for each of them. Each shop had maybe 1 or 2 unique machines, like a wire EDM machine at the Air Machine Shop, which I know from experience that nobody really uses because it requires a ton of training. Otherwise, machines are practically identical. I walked out of the interview with my focus narrowed. Machines themselves were not part of the equation. What did stand out to me, however, were the machinists that the Aero Machine Shop employs. While the staff members at the Invention Studio, or PIs, are all students, the Aero Shop employs retired professional machinists to oversee training and run the shop day to day. So, I decided to do some secondary research into the general field of machining. From one older source titled Shortages of Machinists, an Evaluation of the Information by Neil Rosenthal, the author analyzes job trends of machinists in the late 1900s. Over time, machinist jobs had begun to fall as more people exited the industry and fewer people were becoming apprentices to replace them. I surmise that this trend is due to a generational effect following World War II, which was about 30 years prior to the data being analyzed. If people started becoming machinists to support the war effort around 1940, then around 1980 they would begin retiring, as the data seems to suggest. Using this data and the fact that automated machining has only been growing, I extrapolated this data to present day, connecting that the machining industry has been declining over time. Where this actually relates to GT is the machinists who staff the Aero Machine Shop. Because the industry seems to be shrinking, having retired machinists is like passing down the secrets of the ancient art of machining. After researching machinists, I was reminded of listening to people talking about their technical interviews with aerospace companies, where they were asked about machining but as engineers to make their parts more efficient and machinable, not to solely become machinists. My running theory became that although the field of operative machining was going away, engineers were kind of taking it on as an additional skill in their roles. In an attempt to solidify the outdated information and verify my thesis, I talked to Kurt Gujelov Shapiro, my current senior in YJSP, who interned at SpaceX this past summer. Instead of verifying my theories, however, he told me quite the opposite.
And there's a whole team of machinists who that is their entire job, and they are much better than you will ever be.
He also elaborated on why machining in college is necessary, talking about the workflow in industry, going from CAD or computer-aided design models to analyzing those parts to presenting them for feedback, and finally to work orders where the part would finally be made. By learning to machine, Kurt makes a point that you are learning how to design better and more efficient parts, not to actually be able to make them. In other words, you're making the machinist's jobs easier, which reduces turnaround time and increases efficiency in industry. At this point, the story was beginning to come together more completely, but to make sure, I did some research into current statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. According to their data, machining jobs have largely stagnated, not declined. From 2023 to 2033, a total loss of 700 jobs is projected, which for a field of hundreds of thousands of workers is largely insignificant. Compared to the general field of aerospace engineering, which is projected to grow by 6% in the same time period, machining is starting to dwindle as a job, especially compared with related fields. To add on, the BLS predicts over 35,000 jobs opening every year, but still no growth, indicating a lack of new workers in the field and likely an eventual shortage of workers. And that brings us back to today. After all of my ethnographic research, interviews, and secondary reading, I've validated why so many people at GT engage in one kind of machining or another. Not necessarily because they'll be machining in industry, but because of the skills which machining brings you. As for why YJSP and I primarily use the Air Machine Shop, it's because the machinist will teach you, one way or another, how to make better parts, either by complimenting good decisions or criticizing the poor ones. So why was I in the Montgomery night basement at 6:45 a.m.? I can now confidently say that I was doing career development, sitting on the concrete floor, barely awake. Thanks a ton for listening, and have a great day.